Yeah, okay. So tonight we are going to talk about the what that happens on the HarmonyOS, which the Huawei is actually pushing out. I've been very busy to get it ready and so on. Now, before we actually look into the a little bit of detail, let me explain a little bit to everybody regarding this mobile OS. Now, basically, it consists of a few key components actually to make up the whole ecosystem. It is not just the mobile OS itself. It actually have to involve along the way a lot of other components. So if you look into the my introductions over there, they actually have started only last year, I think, after the so-called Huawei's sort of conference, developers conference in August. And then this year, the new conference for 2020 just over in September. So there was actually good progress as far as the CEO's explanations. So what they have actually done is actually the whole new Harmony OS was actually started off based on the HongMeng OS, which the Huawei was actually developing all the while to prepare for the so-called Internet of Things. So it was a very basic kind of OS. They are catering for all the connections for all the rest of the, in the Internet of Things. Actually, every device is actually considered one of the device to be connected into the IoT and so on. So they actually have to base on such a simple OS to build up from the bottom. And then what they try to do is now is actually they want to come up with a standardized and then sort of across the different platform. When you're talking about the different platform, they are actually referring to the different kind of devices. So starting from, let's say, maybe a mobile watch, maybe a future spectacles, and they, of course, they're talking about the connections to the mobile, the electric vehicles, to actually able to run and communicate to the all kind of different system. And of course, the other one is actually about the internet TV, which is actually at this moment there are a lot of television sets already have the Samsung TV. They have their own Samsung's system also, and then Androids. In fact, Google's have the Android's TV service also. So in order to do all this, they actually have to start off with a kind of development tool also for the developer to use. So the developers will actually use it. Basically, there are two different kind of kits. One, they call it the, you can see on the screen, I actually put down there as the EMUI. EMUI is actually one of the interfacing kind of software that the developer, in this case, actually is the host to actually doing it. So Huawei himself is actually developing this system. The EMIU is actually tapped onto the Android system. Yeah, it's an interface the software to actually link the Huawei's OS with through the Google's Android's platform. As you know, Android platform is actually available to everybody because it is developed as from the open source. So everybody can actually make use of it. So there is a reason that actually in this particular case, Google's can only cut off on the so-called the Google's mobile service. There is the GMS. So in this particular case, when the Huawei actually try to actually make use of the Android system, they actually had to come up with their own HMS, which is stand for Huawei Mobile Services, the equivalent of the GMS. Is that clear on this part? So you can actually see that, you know, so this is one part of it is actually within the first 6 months since last year, after the August last year, they're actually working on that. And that was a reason that by the end of last year, there was some actually new Huawei phone were actually testing on the HMS, you know. Then, so that is actually the first part of it. So for the developer to actually develop the different kind of software for the so-called apps gallery, they actually have to put up the two platform, which is the API, the application program interface kit, plus the other one is actually, I think, is okay. The other one is the SDK, which stands for Software Development Kits. So these two, they are slightly different. The software development kits are actually mainly some software that the developer develop and directly interfacing with the OS itself. The other one's API is actually more as a very specific, simpler kind of application program that they tap onto the EMUI to actually link up with the Huawei's mobile services. So is that clear now on this particular thing? I think we must actually get on clear up all the complication and all the whole ecosystem before we can actually start talking about what is their so-called progress. So, okay, once we're actually understanding this views arrangement, then they actually have to recruit and then hold conferences, you know, like what they actually have on the conference, on the developers conference, and then we'll gather all these people and then getting their commitment. And in this particular case, they actually give them financial resources also to encourage the developer to come on board and sign on, and then to actually start submitting the application program. They are so-called their apps. Yeah. And of course, the platform that actually developed by Huawei software engineers will actually have to ensure that all the different kinds of applications program that written by the different sort of developer, because they are come from all over the world, you know, and they are all in different languages also, and there are lots of also interfacing. For example, the Singapore apps, the SP parking and so on will be actually also link up with the Singapore's government's so-called source, so that then they can actually go onto the sort of continuous online kind of communication. For example, when you actually park your car and then you actually turn on the SP, the parking SG, I think, then you will start actually monitoring the number of the minutes and so on, and then they can actually charge you, and then they also can actually monitor which car park you are actually parking your car and so on and so forth. So these are the things that are very localized kind of sort of applications. So the whole platform is actually, they must be able to actually take care of this kind of software. They can actually link up with Huawei's system. At the same time, also link up with the source for all the data and so on. Okay, so that is actually one of the complications. The other one is actually, as I mentioned, is for Google's mobile services. Now, when they first started that time, the whole base of the GMS were actually talking about mobile phone, because at that time, tablet was actually a secondary kind of devices. Actually, I think at least 3 or 4 years after the mobile phone were actually catching on, because with the mobile phone were actually started out when there was 2G and 3G at that time. It was already catching up with the mainly the voice communication and so on. So the tablets only come after that, which is actually can really take off is only after the 4G actually being in the market. Earlier on, so all the tablets devices actually rely on the Wi-Fi and not actually rely on the mobile network. However, because of the different devices, the users kind of behavior also different, and also the device resolution, the screen size, the orientation will also be different. For example, when we are actually working on a spreadsheet and so on, we want it in the landscape kind of environment, and we don't want to do it in the portrait kind of environment. So that means your application software must actually able to detect it, and then will orientate itself so that the user will be easier to actually navigate on the screen itself. Yeah. So thing of this nature is, you can actually see it took quite a lot of effort for Google's to overcome all this kind of added feature that is required for the GMS, because they actually, when they first started that time, they just prepared it for the normal handphone, which is, you're talking about something like a screen of about 4 inches and so on. That is, I think at that time, if I remember correctly, my first handphone actually only about 3.5 inches kind of screen and so on. And then subsequently, when the tablet come in, then the most popular one actually is around 10 inches, sort of the pioneers one, of course, is the iPad and so on, and up to today's, I think they still stay at about 10.1 inch, something like that, because that one is actually more or less the optimum size. People actually don't carry devices of 12 or 15 inches, as a screen like that. Yeah. So that is that part of it. But the only thing is, because when the device was actually gradually sort of progress, and then getting more and more accepted by the user and so on, and at the same time, of course, the Google's since is I think one of the two pioneer in this thing. They have their own sweet time to actually develop and then extend the feature or extend the so-called the format that they actually have to actually cater for the variety of devices that actually they come up and so on, you know. So so they are not actually have a lot of time constraints and so on. Whereas for Huawei, the scenario is actually quite different in the sense that people is not going to wait for them to actually waiting for them to actually sort out for the mobile devices, and then then another couple of years, then they going to stop their problem of the tablets or even on the computer and so on, that kind of thing, or even on the TV and so on, because everybody actually expect that, you know, if I buy a Huawei's handphone and I want to start casting my YouTube onto my TV set and so on, and the two devices must be able to actually adjust on the screen size and so on, and at the same time also you must actually have different, for small mobile phone screen, you may actually have to you don't have so much space like to actually display everything, and then you can have a keyboard and then to input and so on. So these are the complication that, you know, and you can actually imagine how much pressure actually they have for Huawei to actually try to cater for all the different kind of requirement within such a short time, especially for consumer product. And you know, before the US actually, the Google actually cut off the GMS service to the thing because of the government, the US government actually stopping it and so on, and they have no choice because the whole market by then, while we already have so millions and millions of these handphones in US, in Europe, and throughout the whole world, and then they cannot let these people to stop using their products in that sense. Yeah. So they actually have to continue doing the support and so on. And especially the newer product, which are directly sort of hit by the ban from the US government, that they just cannot use it anymore, the GMS service and so on. Yeah. And for that reason, actually, if you probably have recall why the initial parts of the Huawei device, they actually have an interim kind of interfacing, which they call it the Huawei Mobile Service. There was actually purely half Android system and half Huawei system. Yeah. And with that kind of interfacings, they can actually manage to actually get their product still running, you know. That means those people that actually, for example, mainly in India and so on, which they actually a lot of Indian people could not afford the iPhone, and then they really rely on the low-end products or medium-range products actually come from Huawei, Xiaomi, and all these Chinese manufacturer. Yeah. Okay, so that was actually the thing. And during the September, that was actually a few weeks back, the 2020 developers conference in I think in Shenzhen again. I think the actual location should be in Dongguan, actually not in Shenzhen. The Shenzhen is actually the head office, but the conference was actually at Dongguan at their research site. Yeah. So during that time, Huawei actually have revealed that the officials HongMeng OS that is actually able to take care of all the mobile phone and tablets are now ready, and it will be known as version 2.0. So in fact, the first the version 1, which they just call HarmonyOS, is actually for the internet TV, which they actually have tested out in one of the Huawei's own brand. I think it's called Honor or something like that. Yeah, they actually have a second brand, and then the TV set was actually under that second brand name, and they have actually tested out. I think they were actually working well. And the other one is actually Huawei also have the wearables device, mainly the Huawei Watch, which actually they have actually also push out in the market already. So that one actually, the HarmonyOS version 1 is actually capable to handle all the requirements on the watches device. So at this moment, I think probably you can actually come to a stage that, you know, for the next step of the thing will be Huawei is actually at the moment facing some other problem from the US governments because of the embargo and then the banning of the using of US technology. As probably, I think some of you actually also noticed that, you know, Huawei actually have designed their own CPU. On the CPU's design part of it, that means the software part of it, they actually have designed their own CPU, and it was actually one of the as good as the top end that actually come from the Broadcom and so on, you know. And of course, the other one actually, Broadcom is actually the one that actually making all the Snapdragon and so on, the series of the CPU. Yeah, and Broadcom, the problem, and Huawei, before they actually are using their own CPU, they were also using a Broadcom CPU. But at that time, Huawei already have done some design on their own. In this case, the Krilin series. So it started off in I think the first batch of Krilin's CPU were actually used for the P20. They actually have the two series. One is actually the P series, actually for general use kinds of mobile devices, you know, and they are specialized in very good with the Leica's camera and so on. The other series is actually the Mate series. The Mate series is actually more equivalent to the Samsung Galaxy Note series. So they actually have some of their own applications for actually, if you are a designer in graphic and so on, you can actually use the Note series, the Mate series, to actually do that kind of creative work and so on. Yeah, and of course you can actually use it for taking down handwritten notes, and then with the OCR, you can actually convert into text and so on. And you can, of course, doing some editing on document, like on the PDF document and so on. So mainly they are actually, every year they will actually alternatively, actually one in the middle of the year, they will come out with a new series on the P series. And then towards the end of the year, they will actually have the M series and so on. So now, why I'm actually mentioning this is actually because it is a very important stage now. Yeah. So the M series is actually now at the final stage of the preparation, and they actually want to push out by end December or early part of January next year. I think the reason is, of course, they want to be 100% sure that the HarmonyOS version 2 will be working properly, and they want to actually push out the Mate 40. Last year, the Mate 30, which came out, I think, was actually end of 2019. And it was the first, let me see. I think it was the last one actually still able to run on the GMS system. This is the P40, which was actually introduced early part of this year. I think during the COVID-19, in Singapore, we call it the lockdowns, the circuit breaker period. They actually launched during that time. So there was not much actually, people actually have noticed that they actually have launched that. And that one will actually launch with the Android base plus the what is that now? EMUI interface plus the HMS to run on the P40 device. And there was actually, if I remember, the very last talk that I actually, before the long break for me, I was talking about, at that time, was talking about the P40 that was about to come up and so on. And then, and subsequently, when the P40 came out early part of this year, there were a lot of people, some clever people, try to tweak on the device itself. And some people were actually quite successful to actually go into the software and then able to change it to link up with the GMS. And some of them were actually quite happy, all the apps that they are using, which was not available on the HMS devices, they were able to actually get it back from, especially when they migrate their old data from the P20 devices. They can even actually, just migrate it to the P30 series. I think it was P40 series, sorry. They are from P30 to P40 series. And then, I remember at that time, I ever gone to the Huawei showroom at this 313 shopping mall that time. I saw them actually giving out this leaflet also, informing those people that actually interested to actually buy the P40 devices. And then that developers were actually helping them to actually migrate the data from their P20, P30 to P40. Yeah. So that was actually that much of it because at that time there was an interim kind of phase from the Android plus the what I say, the HMS, and then get onto the P40's device. Yeah. So now for the Mat 40, which is actually going to, as I mentioned just now, is actually probably the latest will actually in January next year. When they come out, that time it will be 100% Huawei's OS, HarmonyOS version 2. Okay, is there any questions? Anybody want to ask? Hello? Can somebody say something?
Yes, Graham.
Yes.
How do you find the Huawei software as compared to the Android one now? Any idea?
What do you mean by Android? You mean Google's software?
Google software. You say
Okay,
they've already improved on it.
I think actually maybe let me touch on a little bit on the what the GMS and HMS actually, they are actually that platform. What is that actually using? You know, for the GMS, this so-called mobile service platform is actually to take care of all the basics application software. And this basic application software will be a calendar, an address book, and then of course is the Mac, and also the email platform. Can you see these four? So when the people, you know, those people actually can recall when we were using the Palm device that time. The Palm device only provide these 4 different elements. And you can even actually remove the Mac actually at that time. There was actually, of course, the Wi-Fi and so on. They were actually they can actually use the we call it the Google's Mac at that time. That actually it should be a GM. What is GPS? GPS is actually locate to actually to fix the location where a person is in and so on, because that is actually very important. Yeah. Then the other one is actually the email. Email is actually a platform to actually for you to communicate with others. Yeah. Especially you can actually use it to send some document as well, which the SMS cannot do it. Yeah. And subsequently, of course, they can also use that platform to actually send photograph and then images and so on, you know, all the attached document. Then the other one is, of course, is the calendar. And the calendar is basically the clock. Everything is actually based on the time. Time is a very important element of every device. Yeah. For example, if you want to actually monitor, you know, you have to all the time synchronize your clock on your device with the message or the signal come from the central clock, you know. Yeah, the standard time. So and that part is important because a lot of things are actually measured against the time. For example, if you want to actually have applications software, to actually, let's say, use as a stopwatch, then of course you need a clock. Yeah. Then of course the other one, what I say is actually maybe some address book, which is actually part of it. So the basic thing is actually these are applications is proprietary kind of software. So there is a reason when actually Google stopped letting Huawei to use the GMS at time. They can only actually stop on these 4 elements. The rest of the Android system is from open source, which Huawei can continue using. The only thing you know, if you use the Android source as the basics OS for your device, you don't have all these elements, is of no use at all. So in other words, there was a reason that why Huawei actually have to start develop their own FNS to actually cater for the Android OS system. Yeah. So okay, I think just now the gentlemen, I think I can't recognize your voice. I think when you ask about what is actually the situations, whether compared to the Huawei OS version 2 with the Googles and so on, I think you're actually referring to the rest of the application program. That means all the apps that we are using, including Zoom, including WhatsApp, including a lot of others, maybe Telegrams, or even, of course, don't forget about all the games and so on, And a lot of people buying it, they actually, for especially the tablet, they actually want to play games and so on, So if we are actually referring to this kind of applications and so on, of course, throughout all this year, I think Google's already in the market for, I think, 10 years. I think they started off, I think, probably in 2019 and so on. So last year was 2009, and then last year was actually 2019. So it's just around 10 years and so on. Yeah. So throughout all these 10 years, of course, they have a lot of developer actually writing a lot of localized kind of apps, and also a lot of games which are not localized. I think it's a lot in the sort of everybody play the same games, but not like the parking system in Singapore or the health check system in Singapore and so on. Other country will not use it, and then maybe the Singapore local bank and so on. Then with the PayLah, the PayNow, and all kind of platform which will be different from others country, their payment system and so on. Yeah. So if we are talking about whether Huawei at this moment in their app store, do they have sufficient this kind of localized kind of apps? The answer is yes, because I've actually checked through their app store, and all the Singapore bank and so on, whether OCBC, Stand Charge, or they actually all have developed their apps already. And then you can actually, and if you buy a Huawei device, all these apps are actually there already. And same thing also, the governments, those are kind of apps and so on. Even LTA, the website and so on. Yes, they also actually have developed and then put down there also. Otherwise you'll be in trouble. If you are let's say a used car dealer and so on, and if you buy a Huawei device and then you cannot log into LTA, and how going to actually do your business and so on. You have to do the transaction. Nowadays it's all 100% online. You don't actually submit paper document anymore. So everything is actually all through the website, internet, and so on. Yeah. So is that answer your thing?
Yes, thanks.
Yeah.
This Lim again.
Okay.
So does it mean that Huawei, you're getting value for your money? The way I gather from you.
Well. You know why I'm really laughing? If we are talking about value for money, actually, the devices are not cheap, you know.
Oh,
So we are saying that, it's going to be value for money in the sense that, in fact, for your information, the Galaxy Notes, the S20, uh, the what is now? What was the series? The S series is actually, the S10. It was already last year. And this year they jumped from 10 to 20 actually. So the S20 actually, I think it was launched in August or September, and it's actually that is actually from the Samsung, and that actually cost around 1,000. The cheapest, version, and then they have the plus model, then they have the ultra model, and then of course the latest one is actually they come with 5G. Yeah. So the basic the base set is actually near to $1,000. Although if you actually willing to actually subscribe your plan with minimum is $65 now, with something like 30 GB of data plus 200 minutes of voice call. I think you still have to pay about another $300 or $400 to get the handset bundle with it. But if you go and buy the handphone itself, is around $1,000. And just for your information also, the P40, which was actually, as I mentioned, launched somewhere in March, or I think it's in March or April. Yeah, it was 900 something. Yeah. So the MAT, the MAT series, which is the 40, I think it will be something like $1,200. I think it's more expensive. Yeah. And I have a neighbor actually who is actually not so interested in making phone call and then or watching YouTube on the mobile phone, but more on taking photograph. And he really, you know, he actually buy a phone without a plan, and that cost him something like near to $1,000. I think when you buy outside, uh, for this kind of thing, I think a lot of people also dare not to buy from Selling Square and so on, because sometimes you do not know where the set come from and so on. So of course he pay a heavy price for it, but he's very happy because he can take very nice photo. He told me that even when he go to the this guy actually do like to do a lot of planting and so on. So at night you normally have to get the torchlight and then go and check for the plant whether any insect come and attack the plant and so on. So he say with this handphone, he doesn't have to turn on the light, and then he can shoot in the dark, and then the picture turn out like when you take in the day like. So you can actually imagine that how good is the transducer, with just such a little light that actually can actually give you very nice brilliant kind of color and so on. So it's so happy with it. So I think hardware wise, of course,
they are using a lot of components, you know. I think mainly in this case from Leica and so on. So the lenses and so on are of course are good, and then with the proper AI chips, in this case the imaging light transducers CPU, then it can actually give you a sort of very good picture. Yeah. So
I think if you have a sort of a lot of specific needs kind of thing, I think
should look around, and if you are not also, you know, maybe have to play a lot of games and so on, probably a Huawei set is actually good enough. I think if you want to get all the games from the Google's App Store, then of course maybe they will not actually have the games actually in the Huawei store, you know, the App Store, the App Gallery. But the whole thing is actually, of course, every month you're talking about a lot of increments and so on the app itself. If I try to actually get some statistics and some figures and so on, but apparently nowadays the number of apps are actually really flooded the whole every app store and so on, and then you have so much confusion which one to actually use. You know, for example, just now when I try to actually look for the Zoom apps and so on, there are so many. Everybody is calling themselves as Zoom. You know, so you don't know Zoom in or Zoom out. So that is like the kind of situation. You know, so in fact, we only use those important apps which is actually some, maybe it's actually we need it for daily life use and so on, some communication, and then of course the other one is actually free and so on, you know, which we all like it. We don't have to pay for it or don't have to subscribe for it and so on. And other than that, I think you need not to actually really sort of afraid that you can't get the app. You know, there are sufficient apps that you can actually go around and so on. You know, and of course you want some very specific kind of professional software to actually do your enhancements on the photo and so on, which incidentally the Huawei software for the photography apparently they use a lot of AI technology. So I was told also, you know, they can beautify your face, your, you know, your picture and so on. And for the ladies, they like it very much, you know. So even they have a few more pimples or something, the the camera to actually beautify it for them. So then of course the $1,000 will be also worth it at all. Yeah. Any other questions? If not, I will touch on a little bit on the hardware part of the Huawei device. Anybody, any comments or any clarification? Hello. Hello.
I think no.
No. Okay. Now on the hardware part of it, mainly the CPU. Maybe I would like to touch on a little bit. Yeah, because if anybody intend to buy the handphone, bear in mind. In fact, the US, the officials link the banning of selling the component to Huawei actually effective 2 weeks ago. I think on the 15th of September. Oh, coming to a month already. Now it's on the 16th. Yeah, it was effective actually on the 15th of September. And the top range, the latest top range CPU that Huawei is using is the Xilinx 9000 series. Before that, it was actually series 800 and then 900. Yeah, and then now they actually have 9000. Yeah, in fact, it's actually they don't call it 1000. That means 900 to 1000. I think they immediately jumped into 9000. And then I think they will actually progress from there. Yeah. There is something, the same thing as the Galaxy model. Also, Galaxy it was started off with S3, S4, S5, S6, and so on. The phone up to I think S9. I think there was no S9. They jumped into S10, and then from 10, then this year they come with the S20. So they actually leave a big gap over there. I think maybe interims that can actually add in another something, lower ends, product, and then fill up the gap or something. I don't know. That is mainly, to give them some room to fill in the gap here and there and so on. Yeah. So why I'm talking about it, actually the 9000 Xilinx CPU. Now Huawei actually have limited stock. They actually, before the deadline, the 15th of September, they have actually got all the extra stock. They actually tried, because at that time Trump actually give the manufacturer about 90 days, 3 months to actually fulfill because I think it's unfair, right? Because these people buying raw material, they start producing and so on and so forth, and then I think a lot of people will be very, very angry, because you just cut off like that, within 24 hours. So they actually giving the grace of 3 months, 90 days for them to actually phase out and so on. Yeah. The executive directive actually came in, I think it was in some way in May. And then by September, they had to finish with all the thing and so on. Yeah, so Huawei actually getting this top ends chip. The design is actually come from Huawei. The only thing, in Huawei, they don't have the production line to actually produce the CPU itself. So they will rely on the TSMC, which is the world's top. Just imagine, actually they are even actually more sophisticated than the Broadcom actually. Yeah, and why they are so special is actually they have a very advanced linguistic kind of technology, the equipment actually using photos kind of image to actually do to actually cut out the circuitry and so on, which is we are talking about for information. The word actually come with many years ago. I think I won't say 10, 20 years. I think at least 8 years or 10 years ago, they were actually started off with 40 nanometer. 1 nanometer is, I think, is 1 to the power of 6, I think, of an mm. Yeah. So you can actually imagine that, at that time, it started off at 40, and then it went down to 30 mm, and then went down to 28, and then I think come into 14 and 7 nanometer, and then now the latest one, the Querying 9000 series, is actually talking 5 nanometer. And this batch of actually CPU was the very last batch before the completely banned, supply to Querying. It's actually come with this. So if you want to buy a handset with the 9000 series CPU, I think you have to go fast and then to buy it the moment it push out in January, because apparently Huawei actually have order extra. They try to actually build up their stock. They want I can't remember. I think it's talking about 150 million or something. And they managed to actually only get delivery from TSMC before the deadline closed, something like 90 million only. So it's actually slightly more than half of what they want actually. So in other words, they have limited stock to produce on the Mate 40, and of course I think the P40 continue with the P40 as well. P40 I think is using the 900 CPU, Querying CPU. Okay, so that was actually on the hardware part of it, and I think once Huawei have used up all the stock of the 9000 series, I think they will actually have to rely on their own, other means, together with some others Chinese company in China, whether they can actually able to start producing their own CPU now, because Broadcom will not be able to actually make for them also. In fact, Broadcom actually they actually also have very limited capacity also, because they are the main supplier to the iPhone. And iPhone at the moment, I think, because of the introductions of the 5G, and they expect that the demands of a lot of people that changing new handphone is actually will be coming in the I think this year, I think a lot of country, I think mainly UK, European country, I think mainly Italy and so on, I think they already actually have that 5G service already. But the rest of the people, I think, will be next year, I think. For example, Singapore, I think Singtel and Starhub actually have pushed out some 5G. I think they don't actually, they still give some concession because the network, I think, according to the government's requirement, by end of next year, the Tesco had to actually push out their network to cover about 50% of the whole island. Yeah. So meanwhile, I think they cannot actually charge in a full rate because it's unfair, because a lot of places still not covered by 5G. Okay, any other things?